So, how many of you agree with me that seeing this on national news, whether it's Ferguson or Baltimore or Charlotte, is just getting to be too much? That our law enforcement and our African American community is tearing up those cities. For me, it's not okay. But it's not always like this. 30 days after the Pulse massacre, I was working in Dallas, and I took myself to the Dallas police headquarters. I wanted to give my condolences for the 6 officers that were slain by a sniper. And I saw love. But before 2011, I had never even met a policeman. John Mina, our chief of police, following the massacre, told the world about the commitment and the professionalism of our police officers. And these same police officers have been in a program voluntarily in Orlando since 2011, the first of its kind in the US. Now in 2011, I never knew an inner city black kid. My life was my family and work, but I knew something was terribly wrong, and I thought maybe I can do something about it in a very strange vehicle, in a dragon boat. A dragon boat is 41 feet long, and it only goes forward if you're completely synchronized. So you're going to hear the story of cops and inner city kids, kids in middle school and high school that sit in the boat with Orlando police officers, and they learn trust and teamwork and flatten some of that racial profiling. Now, one of the things I've learned is cops don't like to be silly. So I no longer bring the kids out with the cops. The first time they paddle, the cops are by themselves, and we teach them the dragon boat stroke. We try to tell them this isn't about competition. This is about mentoring. It's about changing lives. The next week we bring the kids out. They're very resilient. They not only learn that on the ground, they're in the water the very first week, and they're actually looking pretty good. They don't like cops. They tell me cops are bad. And I say, well, let's see what happens when we become a team. The third week, we put them together in the water. Now, that doesn't look very good, and they're not very good, because you're supposed to do what the person in front of you does and the person across from you, and when you do that in sync, then the boat goes straight and it goes fast. But what happens is they're not cops and they're not kids in that boat. They're just trying to do this. And then 3 weeks later, we take them to their first festival where they race. But in between races, there's a lot of downtime. And so they sit in the athlete's tent, and cops talk and kids listen. And kids talk and cops listen. And they begin to know each other. And when you know each other, things change. But then they go on the water. Still not so good. But really, they've only been doing it about 6 weeks. But they're trying. They're in their team shirts. They're trying so hard to do it as they compete against other boats. They change. They change in that boat. Now they're competing against 4 boats. They have to stay in their lane, and then they have to be the fastest. So for 500 meters, they have to hold it together. There are no other adult and kid boats. But our cops and kids, they're doing it. And they're not the same at the end of that day. We've learned these kids, all people, you want to belong, you want to stand for something. So t-shirts have become very important. So dueling dragons across the front. But we've learned putting names on the back for cops and kids, they immediately are accountable. They're standing for something, and they just have to do it. Now, we're not about competition. We're about mentoring. We're about changing lives. But once they get it and they are a team, they start winning races. So that's really not what it's about, but they do. And I just had to show you Chris because he loves his gold medal. But these cops and kids, and I mean, again, they're winning races. They have the cup. They're believing. When you start with middle school and high school and you change their perceptions, then it changes in their family, and it changes in their neighborhood, and it changes for the cops. We also try and teach them you're not going to always win. You're not going to always lose, but just winning isn't enough. And so the very next week after that festival, we are back on the water. We're looking at how did we do it? What could we improve? Can we get more synchronized? Can we keep working together? A family eats dinner together. We do this after every practice. So 2 things happen. I know that no child is going home hungry. But the second thing that happens is that they're really getting to know each other in real time. They are just saying, I thought you were bad. Look at the power in this picture. This black male teen has the microphone. The chief of police, he's standing there smiling. He's a wonderful chief. He's given us so much support. But Irvin gets to tell him, thank you. Thank you, chief. How many black males know the chief of police? And Brandon graduated from high school, so he couldn't paddle anymore. But he was accepted at Valencia because his dream is to become a cop. Brandon doesn't have the funds for his tuition. His Dragon Boat family got together to help him out, to make it a little bit easier. And very few cops get positive recognition these days. Our mayor and our chief of police have found opportunities for us to tell our story. This is all volunteer. These cops volunteer for 10 months. These kids volunteer for 10 months. That's a long time. So this experience, it really takes the cops whose job it is to enforce laws and protect citizens, and kids who are pretty much growing up distrusting and fearful of cops, and instead of going, it's us and them, they really are becoming one. Thank you.